Hey guys, if you're shopping for knives and gear, make sure you check out the description of the video you're watching right now for a link to my Amazon store where I've compiled some of the very best items available, including some of my own personal recommendations. Thanks!
What's going on, YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got a really exciting knife review slash knife overview to do with you guys. This is the brand new Chris Reeve Knives Sebenza 31. This is a knife that many people have been excited about for a long time. And I'm sure you're wondering what the heck is different. It looks exactly like the 21. Yeah, they didn't change very much. This is a design that has been considered, you know, by not only the original designer and maker, and now, you know, I think his son and I think his son runs a company, and then he sort of, you know, stands by as a means of influence and communication and just sort of, you know, guidance, I guess. But this design is not one that really needed a lot of change or evolution. There was, you know, the original design was very deliberate, and they have stood by that design for a very long time. And you'll hear, admittedly, you're going to hear this from a lot of diehard Sebenza fans, but you're going to hear that, you know, there just really wasn't a whole lot wrong with the knife to begin with, and there wasn't a whole lot of reason for change. But they did change a couple of things that I think some people will find interesting. I think it's also important to let people know that I actually have links for some of these knives where you can actually go buy this knife unless they're, you know, out of stock. Depends on when you're watching this, but check down in the description if you want to pick up a 31 because they are starting to become more available. Absolutely. This knife was sent to me along with actually the smaller one, which we're going to take a look at here in a second, by at Spirited Blades. If that sounds familiar, it's because I usually reference or name him as Spirited Whiskey, but his actual knife account on Instagram is at Spirited Blades. This is somebody who's been super involved with my channel for a very long time. I talk with him regularly. He's a great guy, and he's got an awesome Instagram account, so you should definitely follow him. So thank you so much, Ryan. I appreciate that. Let's go ahead and get a measurement of this guy. Overall length of the Sebenza 31 is coming in at just about 8.5. It's like 8.35 by my measurement. The actual blade length is about 3.6, and the cutting edge is 3.5 on the dot. Let's do some size comparisons here. Up against the Ontario Rat Model 1. Ontario Rat coming in at 8.6 inches overall, so you can see there's just a hair longer. How about up against the Spyderco PM2? Spyderco PM2 coming in at 8.3 inches overall, and yeah, it's almost exactly the same size, it looks like. Up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue. Ritter Hogue coming in at 8 inches overall. How about up against the Spyderco Para 3? Para 3's coming in at 7.25 inches overall. Just because we are looking at one of the original knives in the Holy Trinity, how about up against the Hinderer XM18? Hinderer XM18 coming in at 8.25 inches overall. And because I've got it here, because Spirited was kind enough to send both, I will show you guys the knife up against the Sebenza 31 Small. The 31 Small, actually, I don't know the length. This is the first time I've ever handled the small one. It's the same as the original. It's right about 7 inches on the dot. So 7 inches on that guy. How's the action? Is it different from the, the action that we always hear about on the Sebenza 21 or any previous versions of it? No, it's exactly the same. It's exactly what I expected. It's very hydraulic. These do break in a little bit, and they can be slightly adjusted so that you can kind of get the little bit different action. But truthfully, I've just come to accept that the Sebenza is not a knife that you flick out. It seems very natural to open this knife slowly. And truthfully, you know, if I was going to carry this knife and use it, it really wouldn't matter to me to deploy it in a fancy way. While it is satisfying to wha-cha a knife, you know, I get that. The clickiness, I always talk about that. That's part of fidget factor. This knife is literally designed as a tool that's made for work. In fact, for anybody who doesn't know, Sebenza means work. I bring this up every time that I talk about the Sebenza because for whatever reason, people look at it and they go, that's a delicate piece of pocket jewelry. It couldn't possibly be made to be used. Not only is it made to be used, and it doesn't matter what I say, there's going to be some, look down there, look in the comment section. There's going to be someone down there going, I don't care what you say. It's not meant to be. It is. There's proof on Facebook collector groups for Chris Reeve knives. You can go to the forums, you can look. People use these, they take videos, they take pictures. There are a lot of these around. They have been in the hands of many different types of people for a long time. They're super popular. They're not a rarity. They're not scarce. They're not things that are always being put in glass cases. Yes, they are expensive, but yes, they are 100% made to be used and to be used hard. I will say that. The Sebenza 31 and 21 and past variants are absolutely hard use knives, and there's infinite proof out there. So, you know, we can debate it all we want, but the evidence is there. These are hard use knives that are meant to be used. But it's very solid. The detent is just exactly what you'd expect. Sucks it down into the handle. The lockup feels very secure, and it's very satisfying. It feels just like the other Sebenza, which I've actually only handled one of. But I've handled many Chris Reeve knives, and the nice thing about Chris Reeve, whether you like the action or not, they're consistent. Each model that I have handled, which it's been a lot now that I've been doing this channel, they are so consistent. It's exactly the same feeling. Even between like the Umnumzan, I've handled 2 different Umnumzans, 2 different Nkosis, 2 different Sebenzas now, and this small Sebenza. They all have that same consistent feeling. And I like that. If it's going to be a certain way, make it consistent, because it gives me faith in their process, right? Their manufacturing and their assembly process is very, very good. How about, let's do weight and blade thickness. So these blades are not super thick. They're not necessarily thin or dainty either. Give you guys a measurement here. Blade stock thickness coming in at about 120 thousandths. We'll do another one just to confirm. Make sure it's all the way closed. Yep, 120 thousandths on the dot. We are looking at unmilled titanium, not super thick titanium, but unmilled. That godforsaken flashlight is constantly, there we go. You can see there on the inside, and I think that's either manufacturing code. I always forget what that is. Was it on the inside of the, it's probably December of 2019. It's probably a manufacturing date, but yeah, no milling on the inside. Not even the alignment hole, which was not meant as weight reduction, but that's gone. We'll talk about that here in a second. But weight on this guy comes in at, in my opinion, a reasonable 4.8 ounces. Yeah, it's over 4 ounces. It's not the ounce and inch thing. I'm sorry, we're being corrected now. This just in, according to my scale, there seems to be a change in the overall weight of the knife. It's actually 4.76. Thank you, undecisive or indecisive scale. Anyways, whatever. That's not a weight you should worry about. More importantly, the carry profile is excellent on this thing. It's not tall, it's not thick. Up against the Spyderco Para 3, you can see here that we're actually coming in slightly, maybe almost exactly the same thickness as the Para 3. So not a thick knife. And then in terms of height, it's got the Para 3 beat and it's got the PM2 beat all the way around. So the only thing that's different is just the weight. But I can tell you that for the most part, the Sebenza 21 is not hard to carry. And if that's still too heavy for you, then go with the smaller one because it's even lighter. But the nice thing about it is that because of the way that it looks, which is very gentlemanly, it's actually a little bit more appropriate in a setting that might be a little more, you might have some people who might kind of shy away from a really aggressive looking knife. This knife doesn't have a super aggressive look to it. It has more of a peaceful, calm, I'm a nice shiny tool kind of look, and it's very simple. There's not a lot going on, so it's less intimidating than other large knives, at least in my opinion, and it's easy to carry. You know, it might not be the easiest thing to carry in super tight, you know, fitted slacks or something like that, but if you wanted to, you totally could. In any other normal EDC scenario, you're not going to have a problem with it. I would do a hardware check, but the knife actually comes with its own tool, which was not included here, but it's, I think those, no, I think that's still a hex head, or it almost looks like it might be Torx. I'm tempted to try. We'll go ahead and plug the stuff that I always plug. The handy dandy Ouija bit selector and magnetic driver, 2 items that are super inexpensive and that you can find down in the Amazon store that I always reference at the beginning of the video. Just pull open the link and look for knife maintenance. That's not going to be it. I'm going to try a T10 in that pivot. I don't know why. I want to find out. I don't check this stuff because I have bias against certain sizes of hardware. It's not a T10, and I don't want to mark up the pivot because this is not mine, so we're not going to mess with it too much, but I think it's still a hex. And I mean, if it is, it's, you know, putting a Torx in there isn't going to mess with anything. Yeah, I mean, that's a T8 hex. But anyways, it comes with the tool, which is really great. That's another incredibly cool thing about these knives. They still come with the usual, you know, it's like got the really nice box, and it's got the tool, and it's got all, for people who like the presentation of nice packaging, this knife comes with that, and that's really nice. On top of that, it comes with an excellent warranty, and they want you to maintain your knife, because these knives will come apart and go back together exactly the way that they are supposed to every single time. You'll hear that everywhere. Go ahead, take it apart, clean it, put it back together, and then talk with us if you have a problem. That's excellent. I have no issue whatsoever with that. You can see that the hardware is the same all over the place. That's perfect. That's why I have this bias about hardwares, because knives, like, it's like, how simple is this? Like, Chris Reeve knives have been doing this forever, and everybody's like, yay, we love this, and you gave us the tool, and it's so easy. Just do that. Other knife manufacturers, other knife companies, just do that. Make the hardware the same size and provide the tool. Let me make sure that I'm correct. Same size, same size, same size, same size. It's the same thing. Easy, easy. Let's just always do it that way. That would just be so great. But anyways, we did the hardware check, we did the action, we did the size comparisons, we did the weight, we did everything. Let's go ahead and talk about the knife. So again, the dimensions and the design is roughly exactly the same. You don't have the alignment hole anymore, which is kind of silly, but it is an aesthetic upgrade. That alignment hole was weird. It didn't necessarily take, people were like, oh, gunk can get in there and it's a gunk trap. What? That's weird when people say stuff like that. Like, if there's a hole over the pivot and gunk can get directly into the pivot, okay, maybe. But the alignment hole, no. The problem with the alignment hole is that it was unsightly. It was a hole that was there, and it was like, why is that there? That's weird, right? And people will point out, well, you don't complain about when people cut notches, and, you know, like they cut the hinder notch where they have the filler tab in there, or knives that don't even have a filler tab. They cut a notch in there for the pocket clip on the other side. What's the difference? I don't know. That's how my brain works. It was unsightly to me. It's not there anymore, which is nice. The other thing that's a little different, and actually Ryan had to point this out to me, the chamfers are a little bit more dramatic, and it adds for a little more rounding, a little more softness on the outside. And maybe it's my brain picking up on that, or thinking that I'm picking up on that because he told me, right? Maybe it's a sugar pill. But yeah, I mean, that's nice that they did that. If it was so subtle that I could barely notice, you know, I mean, they took this extra step just to, you know, just to appease the very few people that were sensitive enough to the original that, you know, it bothered them. And so that's cool. I'm glad that they did that. Moving on to the blade, we are looking at CPM S35VN. I know there's some people who are, why didn't they upgrade to 20 CV? You know, I think a lot of people know by now. In today's knife world, you know, looking at knives anywhere from like $150 all the way up to, however, you know, $1,000 that are using 20 CV and, you know, 20 CV or S35VN, or, you know, maybe you have an option between the two, like Rick Hinder knives. For people who, you know, aren't necessarily going out and like really beating the crap out of the knife, and they just really want the extra corrosion resistance and edge retention, then yeah, I can understand why you want 20 CV. But in my opinion, S35VN is just as utilitarian, just in a different sense, and it's just as premium as CPM 20 CV. And considering that this design is absolutely made to be used and used hard, I think S35VN is a better choice. It may not be as corrosion resistant, but it's absolutely a stainless steel. It's also a much tougher stainless steel. In fact, I always say this, and I say I think I'm right. I think S35VN is the toughest stainless steel, but I could be wrong about that. In terms of toughness to corrosion resistance, the ratio. And then it has a good level of edge retention, but it is much easier to sharpen than a lot of other steels in the same caliber. It's even easier to sharpen than S30V. On top of that, I bring this up all the time when I talk about Chris Reeve knives. Chris Reeve helped develop and basically was the main part of the development of CPM S30V and CPM S35VN. And he also designed the integral, it's called the Reeve Integral Lock, or modern frame lock as we know it now. So this guy knows what he's doing, right? It's like, there's a lot of people that like kind of show up on the knife scene and they look at the Sebenza and then they're critical about it. And I'm not saying that some people's opinions don't matter, but this guy knows what he's doing. I just by default am going to trust that the guy who helped develop two knife steels that are widely considered some of the most well-rounded knife steels that exist, and the frame lock, which is a very, still an extremely preferable locking system on today's high-end knives, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say he knows what he's talking about. So, yeah, S35VN is the appropriate steel for this knife. It's going to be great at a lot of things, not necessarily the best at any one thing, but it's going to be very friendly to somebody who actually plans on using it. And for people who are collectors, they're going to be happy that they got that for the money that they spent. For those of you who don't know, we have that very famous hollow ground blade that has the long drawn out flat at the cutting edge. So you have this steep hollow grind, this deep hollow grind, and it gets flat far before it actually gets to the final cutting edge. And that apparently is so that as the knife is used and resharpened, you're not constantly going back to a thicker and thicker part of the V, right? You can continuously, for a long time, attain the exact same level of thickness behind the edge without having to change the angle of the final cutting bevel, which is great. That's another feature that I would assume would be added by a master knife designer and maker, right? Somebody who's been doing this like forever. So that's really cool. The flat on this very classic, very beautiful, and completely sterile drop point blade comes out to about 85% the length, carrying the thickness out nicely on a blade that's not super thick to begin with. You do have a very pointy tip, but reasonably durable, right? And then there's plenty of cutting belly. The thumb stud is out of the cutting path. I mean, maybe splitting the difference on the cutting path, but that's trivial. So yeah, we have a very performance-oriented blade, and then the spine is crowned, which is something that everybody knows about on Chris Reeve knives. Wonderful. This is a very beautiful, very simple blade. The thumb studs have that blue finish on them, and I think everybody knows this. You know, the blue starts to wear off after a certain amount of time. People who are going to use their knives don't really care. And if it's something that's really going to bother you, True North Knives always does the version with the silver lugs. I don't know if they're going to continue to do that or if Chris Reeve is going to offer those directly. The ones that come direct from Chris Reeve or go out to the retailers with the micarta. In this case, I think the new ones are actually overlays. Maybe they're still inlays. I'm not really sure. Those generally come with silver lugs. It is the one that I prefer. I'm not usually a fan of the blue hardware most of the time. I kind of like more of a monochromatic look, but those are available. Yes, the ones with the overlays cost a little bit more money, but I think we can expect to see a wider variance of different styles of these knives. I mean, there were already a ton of them to begin with. I think, you know, if you really want one of silver lugs, it's probably not going to be that much of a problem, at least in the very near future. The only billboarding we have on the knife is the Reeve logo right there. We have the typical bead blasted titanium scales here. Yes, the snail trails show up. This is one of those knives where I actually really enjoy seeing pictures of that's been used. The snail trails on a Sebenza, for whatever reason, seem almost more appropriate than on any other knife. I really like to see a battle-worn Sebenza, because not only is it proof that people actually use knives that are in this caliber of price, it looks like it was almost meant to be on it. And owners of the Sebenza who actually use them, in fact, if you're watching this video right now and you've got a Sebenza in your pocket and you're flipping it, you look down on it, you can see all the scars and, you know, all the, you know, use that you've put that knife through, and you have that proud feeling. I get it. It looks good that way, and good for you for using it. I think that's awesome. You can see here, back here, we have the blue outer part of the lanyard deal right there, and then we have the barrel spacer. These all come with lanyards, and I think these beads are new. This is nice looking. The bead is really nice. It's got the titanium, the blue anodized bowls on the inside. Whenever I get a Chris Reeve knife, I end up cutting the lanyard off of it because I'm not a lanyard person. But this is kind of, it's the one time where, you know, despite I'm always like, I don't like lanyards, I've come to expect a lanyard on the knife, and it's part of the unique flair. It's part of the initial presentation of the knife. If you like it, great. If you don't like it, cut it off. You can always get another one. That's really my feelings about it, because it's not really in the way of anything, and it's not being prioritized over the pocket clip. The pocket clip has a single screw in it. It's got the simple sort of mid pinch in there. It still has the duckbill. I don't like the duckbill because it gets caught on stuff, right? And titanium's more forgiving than steel. It's more likely to bend than snap. And guess what? It's easy to just take off, bend back, and put back on. I have never snapped a titanium clip. I know that some people probably have, but if you do snap the clip, the Chris Reeve warranty will probably work with you, right? So it's not really that big of a deal. the angle and position of the pocket clip is slightly different. Instead of laying directly on the titanium lock bar, it actually splits the difference. This knife does not have an over travel stop, but the stiffness of that clip absolutely does aid. And considering where I'd naturally put my fingers, I don't think I'm going to cause that titanium lock bar to over travel. So I'm actually okay with the fact that it doesn't have the over travel stop. The biggest change is the addition of the ceramic ball interface, which is also the detemp ball. This is a feature that's been on many other Chris Reeve knives. You can just barely see it in there. It's on a lot of other in fact, most other Chris Reeve knives. Most people really like it. It slows down lock face wear over time, just like a steel lock bar insert would, but it's very, very hard. And I've actually never seen a Sebenza with the lock bar worn all the way over. Most Sebenzas look like they're locking up super late, but in fact, they're pretty much locking up in the same place every single time. I think we can actually see the exact point that that ball meets the, yeah, it's like right there. It's about 40%, and it locks up super solid and it's reliable. That's generally always been the case with the Sebenzas, even on the standard carbonized lock faces, but on the other Chris Reeve models that I've handled, no matter how many times I flipped them open, they were just always exactly the same. Let's talk about the lockup. There are some reports out there of people, getting their new Sebenza 31s. Enough reports that I think I should say something about it, or at least comment on it, of some up and down play. So I don't know exactly what to tell you guys other than the truth of my experience here is that this one is absolutely, undeniably solid. There is no movement in this whatsoever. That is the case with this one. This is the only one that I have ever handled. I don't know what else to tell you guys there. It seems like some people are saying, yeah, there's a ever so slight amount of up and down play. That's something that you should talk with Chris Reeve knives about directly. This one doesn't have it, so that's all that I can say. The knife centers up perfectly, which is exactly what you should expect from a Chris Reeve knife, and that's great. Did we cover everything? How about ergonomics? The ergonomics on this guy, same as the 21, are not quite as good as the Umnumzan or the Inkosi, in my opinion, but they're still very good. It's a very comfortable knife. Everything sort of locks in the way that I would expect. The only hot spot is still just barely, just a little bit, the pocket clip. If you're going to be cutting for 30 minutes at a time without gloves, it'll probably bother you. If you're cutting with gloves, or you're cutting, 3 or 4 times a day, like in an EDC situation, it's not going to bother you. So it's just a pocket clip. So again, here's the stuff that bothers me about the knife. The pocket clip has a duck bill. It's slightly uncomfortable. That's pretty much it. Other than that, I would cut the lanyard off and I wouldn't go for the blue lugs, but those are choices that I have the option to make either before purchasing or after receiving the knife. The biggest thing that's going to turn people off to this knife is the price. These are still about $450 unless you want a unique variant, one of the special ones that have the unique graphics or the unique laser work or unique anodizing. Or you want one of the ones with overlays, which truthfully are super nice. The new overlays look so good. Absolutely. Check the links down there in the description, because as time goes on, depending if you're watching this the day that I review it or you're watching it a year in the future, the listing's likely to change. So check that listing out if you want to see what I'm talking about. But anyways, the $450 price tag is what's going to turn the majority of people off. If you're not somebody who regularly spends money in that price range, or you haven't gotten to that point, then I can understand that. And nobody needs to graduate into this caliber of the knife world. But for those who do, and they've got the money to spend and they've bought a bunch of other knives in the price range, right? Are they going to enjoy this? If you are somebody who really needs that fidget factor, who really needs that feeling of fall shut action, the clickiness, this isn't going to be the knife for you. If you don't care about that, and or you plan to actually use this knife, this is a wonderful tool. It will serve you well, likely forever, and it's one of those knives where if it's not abused, you can likely hand it on to somebody when you're done with it. Whether that's a friend, a family member, or one of your kids, it's one of those things. So yeah, this is absolutely a recommendable knife. It's going to go on my most recommended knives playlist. I think the Sebenza 31, while not you know, a mind-blowing evolution. It doesn't necessarily need to be. It's just, it's already good. It continues to be good. It's going to continue to serve people well. This is still a very legendary model. Again, at Spirited Blades, thank you so much for letting me take a look at this. If you guys enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that metal complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.